Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the book We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And coming to us from Brazil today, we have Sonia Rinaldi. Sonia is co-founder and research director of IPATI, which spelled is IPATI, and the English translation means the Institute of Advanced Research on Instrumental Transcommunication. She is the author of 17 books and has been participating in research on instrumental transcommunication for over 28 years, getting the best results in the world, both in transimages and voices. Sonia is recording clear voices of people in the afterlife, people on the earth plane who are unable to speak because of nonverbal autism, Lou Gehrig's disease, dementia, and other such maladies, and unborn children. She is the pioneer in using computers to record transcontacts and introduced new devices into the field of transcommunication, such as the telephone, cellular phone, and Skype. Sonia communicates with a team of researchers, engineers, and scientists in another realm at what they call the BrazilianStation, using a clearly defined procedure. These recordings are crystal clear. Sonia will be one of the people speaking at the upcoming Afterlife Research and Education Symposium, September 15th through 17th in Scottsdale, Arizona, and will play some of these recordings for the attendees. And you can research and register for the symposium at afterlifestudies.org. And you can go to her website at www.ipati.org to find out more. Sonia Rinaldi, welcome to We Don't Die Radio.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Just a word before we start, I would like to apologize for my mistakes in English, for the accent and everything, but I'll do my best to be clear.
Well, there's no need to apologize because I don't
Thank you.
speak Portuguese, and I appreciate all you do, and I appreciate you taking the time to spend this hour with us.
Thank you.
I remember, Sonia, I don't remember, 2003 or 4, that I saw you speak in Atlanta at an afterlife conference, and I heard some of the recordings from then, and I couldn't believe that someone is doing what you are doing. So I am very grateful for you today.
Oh, I thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners. And if I may be of any help with what I learned all these years, it would be my pleasure to share with you and your listeners.
Yes, I appreciate it. If you could give us your story, how did you start working in the field of trying to get communication with the afterlife?
Okay. Basically, there are two reasons for persons to be interested in life after death. Or the person lost someone who loved, or has a scientific interest in discovering if there is anything else besides the reality that we can see and touch. Obviously, that the first group is the 95% of all the persons who is interested in the theme, but I belong to the second group. By the time I started being interested in instrumental transcommunication, I didn't had to lose anyone. The main reason why I got involved was the necessity of believing in something which could make sense rationally. This is something very important for me. And about 30 years ago, I heard that persons in Europe were registering voices of deceased ones in tape recorders. And then I thought, well, this is something. Let's see if this is real. And then I decided to start my own recordings. That was as I began.
Fantastic. And when you first heard voices on your recordings, were you skeptical? Did you believe?
Oh, it was in truth something funny because by the time, 30 years ago, there was no instructions, no guidance for the beginners. So I decided to start by my own, as my intuitions. And so I decided to make one recording once a week. And for 2 long years, I didn't listen to anything. I was so upset because I said, oh, come on, this is not real. And then I decided, well, I'll make my last trial and end. That same afternoon when I recorded, I listened many, many times the radio, from the radio, speaking directly from the radio, the word water, water, water. And I said, wow, this is a communication, because obviously no radio show would be speaking so many times the word water.
Right.
So I said, well, now I have something. But later I perceived that the problem was not that they were not speaking. Possibly they were. The problem is that I didn't know what I was looking for. So that was my beginning.
And it's amazing that on the last day when you were going to finish, give it up, is when you got the water.
Yes, it is true.
Wow. And then what happened?
Well, I think that in these long 30 years, I saw what sounds for me very slow, but from who sees from outside that it is not that slow. But I saw a real development. And obviously, I insist that this is not do it to me, but do it to the goodness of our spiritual friends who really makes the communication to function. So I say always that the ITC experimentator is the least important part of the game. You know, our task is very simple. It is something like to turn on and turn off buttons, while the real communication is done by the other side, right? So
Yes.
At the beginning, let's say that nearly for 15 years, I was just in touch with the deceased ones. I had the opportunity to help many, 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 many mothers who lost their children. It is important to say that I never charged for anything.
Wonderful.
All I have done was free. My objective was really to help them to diminish their pain and so on. And so these first years, just recording voices. But in the beginning, I was also using the tape recorders and so on. Then I discovered the computer and changed it to it. And I noticed that I thought that the communication of with the deceased ones was just what we could do. But later I discovered that no, instrumental transcommunication is much, much, much more than to speak to the deceased ones. And after some 15 years, I received a sentence recorded asking me to add a video camera. And by that time, I didn't know how I should do,
Right.
how I would use it. But I bought one and trusted in my intuition and started recording. And then I started, let's say, what could seem second phases, when not only I was in touch with the deceased ones who was speaking from my station, transmission station and beyond, but also with higher beings, with much more knowledge, which made it possible the transmission of images, because there is a very clear separation between the communication with via voices and via voices is something a little bit simpler than to do with images from the other side. The transmission of images implies in the management of photons of light. So it requires knowledge that we human beings are not even close. So I perceive that in these second phases, I was in touch with higher beings that intended to help the communication, to make it stronger, not only bring the voices, but also images to reinforce the communication and to diminish the pain of those parents who lost their children.
Oh, wow. Now, let me ask you, were you recording the video and the sound, and then to hear the voices, you would play them back, or was this happening in live time that you could hear the voices coming through?
Now, these two different phenomena are different in the procedures. The images, the transimages, yes, are recorded and we can see it live. We can see everything that is happening, all the apparitions coming. And many times we just don't see everything because our brain is not prepared to the velocity that they use. So, uh, uh, so image, yes, we can see in real time. But voices, no. Still, we have to put the questions, record everything, and listen later.
Could you, Sonia, give us an example of what you mean? Like if you had a parent there, would they ask questions and then leave a pause or blank space and then ask another question?
Yes, I have been doing in so many ways. Let's say, for instance, that we would record with a mother who lost a child and is from another state in Brazil, far away, let's say. Or, for instance, let's say that the person is in Rio de Janeiro and I am in São Paulo, and then this mother would phone to my telephone, and I would prepare a sound source convenient for the boy. Let's say that it is a boy, the deceased one, to speak, and the mother would start speaking to the child, and the child would be replying, and I would be recording the conversation via telephone, so that later the mother could listen to all the answers that the child gave to her during the phone call. This is one way, but there are also using cell phones or Skype or present here in presence. There are many ways to record, but it could be like this.
That is incredible. How
Yeah, I think so.
many, how many parents? I mean, at some days you've had several hundred, haven't you, that you've worked with? I mean, there's been many. Maybe I'm wrong about the numbers, but you've worked with many people in the past 28 years.
Yes, in truth, 1,000 parents looked for me and I helped. Each recording depends on how long we record. Let's say that if I record for 20 minutes, we can expect about 80 or 90 replies. So it's a
Wow.
lot. It's a lot in each conversation. So it is a lot of work for me. For instance, if once I recorded with a little girl of 3 years old, and I recorded for 23 minutes with her mother in presence here in my lab. And the little girl registered 217 replies. So it was extremely lots of replies. And it is what's important for me is that they say things that only the parents know, and mainly that I don't know, and important information that they can give. For instance, in this particular case that I was mentioning, the little girl was called Amanda, and Amanda, with 3 years old, she said to her mother that she would return after her brother come. By that time, her mother wasn't thinking of having any baby at all, because she was suffering a lot with the loss of Amanda.
Yes.
And even so, she understood that she would have a baby. This would be a boy, and then would come Amanda again, because she said, I will come back after my brother. So you see, this was an important information. And in fact, 1 year later, more or less, her mother got pregnant and had a boy. So I think this is nice. It is a good information, you know.
Yes. And the parents, can they hear as well as you can hear what is being said?
Wow. Yes, I think so. That presently, mainly, I think that the transmissions are nearly very close to the perfection. For instance, I recently recorded, but with a living boy. And this is another story, you know.
Yes.
And and then after I record, in the case of this boy, there was a total of 77, if I remember, replies. So all the replies, all the recordings, the files are sent to an engineer, a friend of mine, who is a volunteer in our institute, and he sent it to 20 or 30 persons to listen and to evaluate the resolution and how clear are the voices. And for instance, in this case that we're talking of this boy Enrico, it was said that some 75% was of quality A and B. A is excellent and B is good. And only a few, some 20 or so, were not clear. So I would say that, yes, parents can listen very clearly.
Sonia, you had sent me some of the Enrico files in an
Yes.
email. Is it okay if I play some of them
Yes,
during
of
this
course.
interview? Okay.
Yes, of course. Just to mention that he's living, and this is very, I think nowadays that these experiments I'm doing with living people, I would say that it is as important as to discover that diseased ones can speak, because I think that these can represent in future a revolution in medicine when doctors discover that coma patient can speak. All patients can give information. You know, I think that this is a contribution that I'm trying to do to people, mankind.
Absolutely. Can you describe Enrico to give people a visual of what Enrico looks like and how old he is?
Yes. Well, just to clarify, better say that about 5 years ago, I read some articles reading about 100 years ago by Allan Kardec, who was the one who gathered all information and created the Spiritist doctrine. And among his articles, very old, more than 100 years ago, he mentioned the possibility of the communication of living people, deceased or not, via sensitive communications. By that time, obviously, there was no ITC, Instrumental Transcommunication, yet, but via sensitive mediums as intermediating the communication with the living people.
Yes.
And these sounded very important for me. And then I said, well, if they could speak via mediums, via sensitive, well, they have to be able to speak via devices too. And then I made my first trial with children in CTU in hospital.
I see you.
Yes,
Okay.
ICU in hospital of children who could not speak at all. They were there for nearly many years already in the hospital, and it was amazing what they informed. These children informed in the recordings. They said, for instance, that they went to the cinema the previous afternoon. I said, wow, they went to the cinema. They don't leave the bed at all. And then you start perceiving that, in fact, good souls possibly goes to hospital and take these children to take walks out of the hospital in parks to see other children and to have some fun. The spirit, the consciousness is not obliged to be tied to the bed. This would be cruel. And then, in fact, I thought, well, they went to the cinema. This was very interesting. And they gave many other information. And this was my first case. Later, when my father, he was with 96 years old, and he had senile dementia, and he was not speaking anymore in his last 6 months of life. And I made many recordings with him, and he gave very interesting information, such as the doctor came this morning. And I said, no doctor at all came here in my house. Then I said, well, it is a spiritual doctor. What means that for persons ill, there are spiritual doctors that visit and prepare for the departure of the body.
Wow.
So it was something, and my father gave names. Once I asked him, who is here with you? And he said, Pascual is here at my side. And I said, well, Pascual was my deceased uncle. Yes, uncle, who died 40 years ago, and he was here. So it was, a thing that is very important information for doctors, for medicine in general. I think it is as important as to speak to the deceased ones.
Absolutely. So many people are in coma, or a child with autism that can't speak, dementia. Yeah. I have a friend of mine whose father couldn't speak maybe 2 years before he died.
Yeah, it is horrible.
Horrible. But to be able to talk to them.
Yes, you see. And also, how many persons presently has Alzheimer? Alzheimer's also person comes to a point that he or she doesn't speak anything with sense anymore. And while he's sleeping, the consciousness is perfect. Only the physical brain is damaged. So a person with Alzheimer's could speak to the family while he's sleeping and inform if he is well, if he's not has not pain, anything.
I'm assuming there is specific information that comes through when people have Alzheimer's or coma, so people know that is definitely their person.
Yes, that there is how they can do it. Now, returning to Enrico's case that you mentioned some minutes ago. Enrico is a boy of 3 years old. He has spinal atrophy, which is a disease that I have never heard until his mother was in touch with me. And what happens with these children with spinal atrophy is that the information from the brain to the body doesn't go, because it would have to cross the spine, and the spine is blocked. So information from the brain, it doesn't go to the arm, to the fingers, to the foot, so the person doesn't move at all, cannot walk, cannot sit, cannot speak, cannot do anything. It is a very horrible disease. And I made a recording with Enrico while he was sleeping, and her mother informed me that in a certain moment he was sleeping already, and I started recording. And he spoke many things, information that his mother could clarify later. For instance, he said that he loved the yogurt, and also, and because we have to talk to him as a child, and we cannot expect that he will speak about the universe,
Right.
We have to speak as speaking to a child. And so his mother had never listened to him calling her mom. And for the first time he said, a kiss, mom. Imagine how happy she was.
Sure.
That's it.
Really incredible. What is this Brazilian station?
I'm sorry, did you say where?
No, yeah. Well, what is it? How did you discover that you have the researchers and engineers and scientists in the Brazilian station that you had to help?
Well, see that there is no miracle. Everything comes from the effort of all the parts. For instance, when I started this nearly 30 years ago, there was no Brazilian station. There was nearly nothing, because there was no interest from our side yet. So at the moment that I started to make a movement and started having other people involved, and I was divulging in a very simple magazine that I was producing myself, and etc. This started getting a body. So the station also started growing together with our interest. There are many places in the world where there is no station yet, because there is no interest in the on Earth. So soon at the beginning, I was just making contact with a man, a male voice, with German accent, so that I started calling him, as I didn't know his name, who he was. I started calling him Mr. German. And yes, and for many years, and up to now, I still call him Mr. German, even that now I know who he is, because much later he told me. And so at the beginning, possibly it was just him and some two or three. But presently, we have a very huge station in the other side, because as here on Earth, in our region, here in Brazil, we showed very strong interest. They grew up, and these called all the higher entities to support them. So as much as we develop our interest, the station gets stronger and stronger with the support of higher entities. So it is easy to perceive, mainly with the images, recordings, that in fact, very high entities in knowledge, let's say, and in science skills are in touch with us, because they work in an incredible velocity. They can manage photons. They can create images in front of the camera from nothing. just manipulating light. So it is something absurd for our science yet. So I know that the station is really huge today, but now, long ago, it wasn't. And I think that these will happen everywhere.
Yes, I know Gary Schwartz and Craig Hogan were talking about this. Is this similar to what they're trying to create in the United States with the soul phone? Do you know?
Uh, n- I think that this is a different thing.
Okay.
Uh, I think that yes, there is a station being formed in the United States. I think that there is a lady, Sherry Pearl, who also will be at the event in September.
Yes.
She is recording and helping. She is making what I have done some years ago. She's helping parents and so on. She doesn't charge. She's a very nice person. I had the opportunity to exchange some emails with her, and so she is bringing strength to the American station, and the same that Craig is also linked to. Uh, but Dr. Schwartz's idea of the cell phone, I think, is something else. There is no connection with transmission station. I don't know precisely the theoretical basis of his ideas, but I'm not sure that it is similar to what we do.
That's okay. I was just curious. I
Mhm.
believe in the world you're the only person doing this. Um, maybe I'm wrong, but I think from what I understand with the Brazilian station and from many, many people that I've talked to, the clarity and the volume that these children have come through to talk to their parents is amazing. It,
Yeah, but Sandra, there is something that we have to correct.
okay.
It is not me.
No.
Uh,
Okay.
no, it's not me. It is the other side. As I said in the beginning, our my importance is very, very, very small. You know, everything is done by them. I would never have the least capacity of doing what they do. So I would say that the our spiritual friends here are really incredible. Yes, they are. Not me, you know.
I think you're special, Sonia.
No.
I understand what you were saying. Have you been able to train other people in the Institute to, if you need a day off, are people getting communication or is it only something when you are there?
No, well, that's something interesting. Uh, yes, I trained many people, gave many workshops, and so on. But mankind is something very difficult to treat because sometimes,
Yes.
but yeah, people is one day absolutely desperate, and you teach them, and at the time this person gets some console, yeah, well, that's enough, and you see, it's not something that goes on. So yes, many persons can get or got recordings, but maybe not with the same persistence that I have, because in these years I have never gave up, even with many difficulties in many times, but I never gave up. But it seems that if the person says knows that the son or the father is okay, it's enough. You know, so it is curious because for me, it is not the point of put in touch a mother with the child, but to these mean universal information. These mean that the spirit doesn't die. It is not that case, that particular case that minds. What minds is that it is a rule for the universe to survive after death. So I think that it is much more important that just to be in touch with my husband, with my father,
Yes.
it is something much greater. Human beings should be aware of this, because consciousness is, as my point of view, I think that the purpose of our staying on Earth is precisely the development of consciousness. So that is what we are doing here, learning, getting better.
Yes.
These should be taught for children, for them not to get despaired when they lose someone in future, and for respect the other, to be patient with the old people, to respect animals, because they are also consciousness, less developed than ours, but even so, it's also consciousness, and it has to be respected, you see. But unhappily, mankind is much ordered with football and dancing and these things,
Well, yes, but I do think there are many people interested in this that
I
don't
hope so.
that don't know. That's why I feel it's so important for me to talk to so many different people, even yourself. I am so excited to hear you. Very excited because people want to know. Not everybody's busy with the football. Some people, yes, but there are people, and I think a lot of time the pain of grief is what starts people searching.
Yes,
And
it
then,
is.
yes, and then maybe hearing from their son or their daughter or whoever will comfort them. But then also they start asking those questions about life and they start learning.
Yeah, that is the goal.
Wow. How is what you do different from, well, in the United States, the electronic voice phenomena? I have first tried it with just a digital tape recorder. You have, I would assume, lots of equipment, more so than just someone with a tape recorder. Yes?
No, not
No?
at all. No,
Oh,
but,
I
but the opposite. But the opposite. I think that as much I'm sorry, as much as we develop, simpler the things will have to be. For instance, I don't need anything else but a notebook, nothing else. That's enough for recording anywhere.
a
So,
notebook meaning your notebook computer, just like a laptop, right?
yes, yes, I'm
No,
sorry,
yeah.
I
No,
call
that's right.
notebook laptop. Yes,
In the
yeah.
United States, a notebook is also the paper that we write on. So I was
No,
thinking,
no, yeah,
okay.
I meant a laptop. Yes,
So you record on a notebook.
yes, and that is enough.
Wow.
Not transimages. No, yes, that's what I tell you. When I started, for you to have an idea, when I started, and obviously I made many, many things wrong. That was as time passed by, I was observing what was wrong and what was correct, and so on. So at the beginning, for instance, when I was still recording with tape recorder, I perceived that they need sound in the space where I was, in a room, let's say.
Like
Like,
background noise, white
yes, yes,
noise.
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, background noise, yes. So I started buying small radios anywhere I went. I bought a small radio. So in one day, I had 19 small radios playing in the room while I was recording. And
Wow.
I was getting mad with such a noise. But okay, it functioned, but it was very dirty. So I perceived that that was making that what was making it was incorrect. It was wrong. So I started diminishing the equipment, and so I tell you, just the laptop is enough.
Do you have background noise?
Yes, that is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, they will not have condition to express as per the way they recorded here with me. They may. exist other types of transmissions, but with me, yes. And to maintain it very under scientific parameters, I discovered a way to prepare the sound source so that it has absolutely no distinguished word, so you cannot absolutely understand anything. An engineer friend of ours, our institute, developed a program to broke the voice, so that I use this sound source, all broken with no sense, and to record. Yes, it is important to have a sound source in our space.
Because they, on the other side, in the other realm, will manipulate that noise into words. Is that correct?
Yes, that is it. We would say that they will reorganize, yes, that sound into another, into an intelligible sentence. So that crowded, noisy will become a clear sentence. Okay, an important thing to say about this is the following. These may sound somewhat strange for persons who are not used to this research, but it is incredible. But there is already on Earth a system created nearly 20 years ago, which is called granular granular synthesis theory. This can be found at the internet very easily. It is a theory used by musicians who can destroy, let's say, a sound, and they recompose a new music with this broken sound. This is the theory of granular synthesis. So let's say that in future, mankind will come to the point where our spirit friends are nowadays. They can reorganize the sounds in real time, as this theory is already showing a direction. We are still very poor. These experiments of these musicians is still very poor, but in future, with the development, it will come the possibility of doing what our spirit friends are doing nowadays.
Sonia, have you heard other things than voices? For instance, have you heard music playing? Have you heard dogs barking? Anything other than just the human voice?
Well, these are other two teams. For instance, when I want the communicator to sing, I put the music as sound source, and it is incredible, but he will sing. As for instance, in Enrico's audio files that I sent to you, there are 2 or 3 in which he sings. And he sings because I put music for him to sing. And then I asked, Enrico, please talk to your mom, but sing to me. And he did. So that is how they can sing. And about barking, it is also very interesting. I made some experiments to communicate with dogs and cats, because under my idea, consciousness is also with them, so they can also communicate even in a poor way. So what I did, I prepared a sound source of barkings, just barking, and put this sound and started communicating with some deceased dogs. And it is amazing. If you want, I can send you some samples. It's amazing
Yes.
because the barking are transformed into words, not as clear, but you see that the barking is not barking only anymore, but it has an information added as a reply. And what called my attention in these recordings with animals is that they usually reply in first person. They say, for instance, I miss my owner. I miss. It is not someone else that is speaking on his behalf. Do you understand?
Yes.
It is I miss. So they mean that they emphasize that it is in the first person. They are speaking by themselves. The dog is speaking, the cat is speaking. And this is something that in future, I'm sure that will be proved so that they can discover that consciousness is under very different stages. For instance, we have our stage of human beings. One day, we will be gods. We will be much more than what we are today. Our consciousness individually will increase, will get better. And at this moment, the animals are what we already were long ago, when we also were under development. So not only they deserve all respect of our race, but we should help them to develop their consciousness. And yes, they can communicate.
I love that. Any one of us who has had a pet knows how much love we have for them, and
Yeah,
our grief can be just as painful when we lose a dog or a cat or a rabbit or a bird or a mouse, whatever kind of pet you may have. So that's important.
yeah, yeah.
Sonia, I
It is.
think, oh, go ahead.
No, no, just to conclude this. Yes, I think that what I'm doing today, I think it is just a beginning, you know. I think that in future, all that I'm doing will be very, will get specialization, such as the communication with animals, communication with the living ones, with the deceased ones. So it is just a beginning, but I think that I'm just showing that, yes, this is real.
Yes. Now, our how do I say this? We are so our souls are so intelligent. So if we have someone right now who might be lying in a hospital bed with cancer and they cannot speak,
Yeah.
or someone with dementia who cannot speak, or a child with autism that cannot speak, are we will they understand us if we are able to speak to them, even though we may not be able to hear them communicate? Do we
Yes,
continue to speak with them?
yes, obviously, this is extremely important because not only I am doing this with instrumental transcommunication, but there are some medical doctors who are making tests with coma patients, for instance. Um, and it was published by BBC of London, a very interesting results obtained by a PhD doctor, um, Dr. Owen, and he spoke to a coma patient inside MRI exam machine.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, it is a MRI, I
Yes,
suppose.
MRI. Yeah.
Yeah. So that the doctor, was speaking to this coma patient that was in coma for some years already. And at the time, he put the questions to the coma patient, asked him, manipulating the let's say the blood in the brain showed in the resonance results that the patient was perfectly hearing and understanding what the doctor was saying. So the coma patient was unable to communicate because of his damaged brain, but his consciousness was absolutely perfect. So it is not, this part of medical research is also coming to the same conclusion, you know.
Yes. Oh, Sonia, I think it's so wonderful. You said earlier, never give up, or maybe you didn't, and I heard that in my mind. But I see you for almost 30 years being a person that just doesn't give up. You keep looking, you keep exploring, and with that, you have the team, the Brazilian station, saying, if she's not giving up, we're not giving up. And so to see how much technology can bloom and how fast it can happen. And 28 years may seem like a long time, but I think you have put in the groundwork for so much more to be developed.
Yeah, but I think that you see, something that we learn with all these is that our technology is absolutely not important, because the technology that functions is theirs, you know. So you may have a NASA equipment here and not
Yes.
happen, but what I think that the great difficulty the other side finds uh, on our side is to find honest persons, serious persons, determined persons that will not give up after a week, you know. So it is not the equipment, because the equipment, it is theirs, in their side that functions. It is their technology, their knowledge, not ours. But you know, mankind is just in childhood. We have to be patient, and
We do. Sonia, I know I want results right away, immediately. It's hard to
yeah,
invest 2 years of recording,
yes,
and I would have given up probably 2 weeks. So for
yeah,
you, I am proud of you for going 2 years
thank you.
before you got the first recording. Sonia, do you have, and you can maybe send me this after, if you would like to send the sound files of the dog, but do you have any
Yeah,
of the pictures that you received from the video? Is there anything like that?
yes, of course.
Oh, of
Uh,
course,
uh,
she
uh,
says, of course.
Yes, of course. In the file I sent to you, maybe you didn't have the opportunity to see
Okay,
it, because it was long, I know, but it happened something very, very amazing. At the when I recorded with Enrico, I recorded first voices. I was speaking to him and so on, and he was sleeping and so on. Uh, his mother had sent to me a picture of Enrico and her son and her together and so on. So I put in front of my camera the picture of Enrico's mother and him, the baby, side by side, and started filming this picture. So I was recording a video of a photo, right?
right,
You can imagine that a photo will not change,
right.
right? That is the obvious. But it changes, not only changes, but it see this very interesting case. It is already in with you. You can if you can separate this part if you wanted to add to your site, and so please feel free to use it as you want.
Thank you.
You can you see, I can also see send the video if you want, and you will see in real time that the picture, the boy and the mother, the boy remains all the time the same, but the mother becomes a priest.
Wow.
And after I perceived that the priest was someone that I knew, and this priest died about 100 years ago. And he was a Brazilian scientist who discovered the radio before Marconi. So he is presently one of the coordinators of the transmission station. This priest is called Roberto Landel de Moura. And it was amazing because it was the first time that this priest appeared, and it appeared over Enrico's mother in the picture, and you see it live. So I think you see, it is something that we cannot say that it could be done by humans. This
No.
could fake. It is impossible because it would be so difficult to fake that it would be so such a work for nothing, So you see that it is real, and the only very high entities with high technology could make such changes in real time. So I can send you any example you want.
Yes, I would love that. And for you who is listening right now, by the time you hear this, there will be some sound clips and maybe even some video. I will figure out the technology to have this on YouTube. So after we close this episode with Sonia, if you continue to watch this, I will put this on YouTube. We will put some audio and hopefully some video. I'll see if I can figure the technology. I'm sure I can. Anyway, Sonia, if people wanted to if this interests people, would you have a recommendation how people could start uh, doing this or finding out more?
Um, well, um, well, in September, in the event, I'll be there in Phoenix, in Scottsdale,
Yes.
Arizona, and if anyone would like to talk to me, I would be pleased. I'll be showing images, everything with living with dead, deceased, and everything. And but if they are, and also I know that that lady, I think she lives in New York.
Oh,
She'll
Sherry
be
Pearl?
yes,
Sherry
yes,
Pearl, yes.
yes, Sherry Pro. She'll be there, and she will make a workshop for recordings. So that if person wanted to learn may have watched her workshop, and if they have any doubt, I'd be pleased to help. And
Wonderful.
yeah.
I'm
And also I
excited.
have sorry.
No, I'm excited. Go ahead. You can finish speaking.
Yeah, no, I just say that I have two ebooks at the Amazon site, so that if the person is interested, but unhappily, both are in Portuguese, so it won't do not help too much. But it was just the one who in which I teach how to record, but unhappily it is in Portuguese.
Oh, it is okay. No problem. I thank you, first of all, for doing this interview in English. I thank you for the work that you do. I thank you for the dedication you have. I have heard from many people, Sonia, that when we die, we have a life review. We hear this all the time,
Yes,
and you see the impact that you have on other people's lives. And I believe with all of my heart, when that time comes for you, you will see the thousands of people's lives that you've touched, the hope that you have given people, including parents, the joy you've been able to help people feel again,
yes.
and that it is a most beautiful thing. You are a beautiful woman. I am so grateful to meet you on Skype right now, and I'm very excited to meet you in September.
Well, I thank you so much for your words, Sandra. I just hope that your listeners can have understood what I said because of my English.
Yes, it is just fine. We understand the words, we understand your passion. And also, I do have some friends that wrote to me from Australia that they said they cannot go to the symposium in September, but if anyone goes to afterlifestudies.org, I recommend that you go follow the link to the Afterlife Research and Education Institute and join. I think it's only $25 to join, and to be on you get to be on the mailing list, and so that you will continue to find out information about what's happening in the world of communication between, what do you say, between the realms, I suppose.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful thing. So the day will come that this is common, that people realize that their loved ones are not gone. They just may be invisible, but people understand that life is for the development of consciousness.
Yes.
Yes.
And you make a great work too, Sandra. I think that when you die, you will also see the beautiful work you have done in your life. So you are my congratulations to you too.
Thank you, Sonia. I encourage all of us to find your passion because it is so easy to do what we love and to share. So just find it and share with others. So thank you to Sonia Rinaldi, who has been our
My pleasure.
guest today. Her website is ipati.org, which is IPATI.org. And I'm going to ask you to continue watching this video even after the closing music, because I have included some of the clips that Sonia had told us about during the episode. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Amanda, Amanda, beijo para você, para os nossos amigos. Tchau. E da mamãe, hein? Você adora a mamãe, né? Gente, hoje tem dois signos que correm a vida. Gente, hoje tem dois signos que correm a vida. Sara, você tá com o outro gatinho Ninho? Tá aí com você também? Fifi, você é muito linda, viu, querida? Sara, você tá com o outro gatinho Ninho? Tá aí com você também? Fifi, você é muito linda, viu, querida? Rico, você pode conversar com a tia Sônia? Vamos, você lembrou? 4. E Danone? A Bisa tá aí com você? E pro papai? O que você gostaria de dizer para a mamãe? Você sabe o que causou que você viesse assim quietinho? Um beijo, Henrico.